Hello all, welcome to today's class. I am Sushma D, your tutor from GFGC Shira. Today we shall continue discussing a wonderful poem by an Indian poetess Toru Dutt entitled Lakshman. Before we proceed with the poem, let us have a quick recap of the previous class. In the previous classes, we have discussed about the poet, about the poem, and also we have discussed around 18 stanzas of the poem. Lakshman is written by Toru Dutt. Her period is 1856 to 1877. She was the first Indian woman poet to write in English and is often referred as the Keats of Indo-English literature. She wrote both in English and French and left behind an impressive legacy of poetry and prose when she died at the age of 21 in the year 1877. She was deeply interested and inspired by Hindu mythology and its legends, characters, gods and goddesses. And this finds ample reflection in her works. She seems to me a kind of cultural icon, someone who helped us to understand the modernity of India. At a point when India was suddenly emerging as a modern nation state. Because the nation at that point was going through an extraordinary journey. That journey where the Indian thinkers begin to imbibe British or Western knowledge, what we call the Bengal Renaissance. Because much of the action took place in Calcutta at that time. There is a saying that what happens in Calcutta today will happen to the rest of the Bengal tomorrow, and what happens in Bengal today will happen in the rest of India. About the poem. The Lakshman is a part of the collection Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan written by Toru Dutt. What is the form of the poem? The form of the poem is ballad with 8 lines in each stanza. It describes an episode from Ramayana and deals with 2 of its main characters, namely Sita and Lakshman. Sita and Lakshman are the 2 mythological characters portrayed in the poem. Toru Dutt eloquently portrays the inner struggle that Lakshman undergoes when faced with the choice of whether to obey his brother's command or his sister-in-law's wishes. On the whole, Lakshman is the portrait of the ideal brother, a splendid picture of chivalry and self-control. In the poem, Sita comes across not just as a mythological character as the wife of Rama, but as a human being, a woman to be particular, prone to human emotions and human provocations. Again, as a woman, Sita comes across not as a meek and submissive character, but as an authoritative and dominant person, the one who is aware of her rights, the one who is capable of battling for her rights and getting her demand accomplished. The theme is derived from Ramayana. The Ramayana is an ancient Sanskrit epic which follows Prince Rama's quest to rescue his beloved wife Sita from the clutches of Ravana. Rama, the prince of Ayodhya, wins the hand of the beautiful princess Sita but is exiled with her and his brother Lakshman for 14 years through the plotting of his stepmother Kaikeyi. In the forest, when they stay in Panchavati, Sita is deeply moved by the golden deer roaming around and asks Rama to get it for her. Rama tries his best to persuade Sita, but Sita doesn't succumb herself to the words of Rama. Thus, Rama goes in the pursuit of the golden deer in spite of the forewarnings expressed by Lakshman. Lakshman guesses that the golden deer is Maricha in disguise sent by Ravana. After a long pursuit, Rama fells the deer with an arrow. While dying, the deer cries out in Rama's voice for help. Hearing the cry, Sita mistakes it for Rama's voice, and this is where the poem begins. The poem is a dramatic dialogue, and the first 3 stanzas of the poem, that is, first, second, and third stanzas of the poem depicts Sita, who is so worried, excited, and upset all at once on hearing the voice of her husband Rama calling out for help. Overpowered by fear, she imagines Rama beset with danger and berates Lakshman for standing as if deep in thought when he should be girding on his sword, bow, and arrows and speeding to rescue Rama, who is in danger. At his continued silence and inaction, she cries, "Is it my brother that I see?" In the next 5 stanzas, that is 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th stanzas, Lakshman tries to persuade Sita, who is completely filled with worries and fear, and he disapproves of her doubts of her husband's might. The lion and the bear bent before the royal look of Rama. The deadly cobra and python glides away in shame, and even Rakshasas, Danavas, demons, and ghosts are filled with terror at his very sight. He therefore requests Sita to be herself bold, great, and wise by wiping the dusted tears. He even speculates that the cry is raised by some trickful foe. And all the more, he was not willing to disobey his brother's command. At this point, in the next 6 stanzas, that is 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th stanzas, Sita employs the weapons like taunts and scorns, mockery and sarcasm at random to mobilize Lakshman into action. She accuses him of desiring Rama's death so that he may win for himself his brother's wife and for his brother his kingdom. He says that what a fair partition they have made. She insults him with the final declaration, "Learn this, whatever comes may come, but I shall not survive my love," and swears in the name of God that if fire can burn and water drown, I follow him. Thereupon she asks Lakshman to choose the way either of truth with its everlasting crown or falsehood, treachery, and guilt. By offering such a choice, she further says that she will not urge him any more, as her path is clear and she is without fear. In the last 8 stanzas of the poem, that is 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd stanzas, Lakshman finally decides to leave Sita all alone in the forest and goes to rescue Rama. So we have discussed almost 4 stanzas of the last part of the poem, that is 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th stanzas. In these 4 stanzas, Lakshman, though aghast at Sita's accusations, he emerges as the loyal and devoted brother that he is. Unable to retort to any of Sita's accusations and hurt deeply by Sita's strong words, he is forced to break his principle to disobey Rama's orders and leave Sita all alone in the forest. But before going, he seems to be less careful towards the dangers coming ahead and praise God for keeping Sita safe. He takes pity on himself by disregarding the order of his respectable brother. He is deeply pained, but the grief and the wild language of Sita have compelled him to do so. Though he seems too overwhelmed with the sense of crime, he requests Sita to think better of him from that time. He then traces a magic circle, which is very popularly called as Lakshman Rekha, on the ground with his arrow, bidding her on the account to go beyond its border may harm her. He strictly orders Sita to not to cross that Lakshman Rekha, because every enemy in that forest are designing a bad cause to hurt either Sita or Rama. Let us proceed further. And now, farewell. What thou hast said, though it has broken quite my heart, so that I wish I were dead, I would before, O Queen, we part freely forgive. For well I know that grief and fear have made thee wild. We part as friends, is it not so? And speaking thus, he sadly smiled. In this particular stanza, before bidding farewell to Sita, Lakshman repeats that whatever she has spoken has broken his heart. So he wishes to be dead and requests her to forgive him, as that grief and fear have made her rash. Then he forgives all her blames and blesses her before he departs and asks her to share a friendly relationship with him. And woe, you sylvan gods that dwell among these dim and somber shades, whose voices in the breezes swell and blend with noises of cascades, watch over Sita, whom alone I leave, and keep her safe from harm, till we return unto our own, I and my brother arm in arm. In this particular stanza, with a keen knowledge of the dangerous step he has, but no choice to take, Lakshman calls out the forest gods, namely sylvan gods, who dwell among dim and somber shades of the forest, and requests them to watch over Sita, who will be all alone in the forest, and keep her safe from the harm till he and his brother return by holding arm in arm. For though ill omens round us rise and frighten her dear heart, I feel that he is safe. Beneath the skies his equal is not, and his heel shall tread all adversaries down. Whoever they may chance to be, farewell, O Sita, blessings crown, and peace forever rest with thee. He said, and straight his weapons took, his bow and arrows pointed keen, kind, nay indulgent was his look, no trace of anger there was seen, only a sorrow dark that seemed to deepen his resolve to dare all dangers. Hoarse the vulture screamed, as out he strode with dauntless air. So in the final two stanzas, an appearance of ill omens, even though frightens Sita, Lakshman is very sure that Rama is safe beneath the sky. After speaking these words, he took his pointed arrows and bow, kind and indulgent, without any sign of anger, but with a sign of dark sorrow on his face, he departs. A sense of foreboding descends as Lakshman leaves Sita to venture in search of Rama. When he came out, the vulture screamed, which must have filled his mind with a sense of fear. There, the poem ends. A striking aspect of this ballad is no doubt the style in which Sita's accusations and Lakshman's heart-rendering responses to them are dealt with an emotional and psychological level by the poet. So the poetess has tried her best to portray the two mythological characters Lakshman and Sita by placing them from the framework of the mythological aspects and portrayed them as human as possible. I hope that you have enjoyed the poem to the fullest hope. Thank you all.